What's up, everyone? Today I got two short stories for you. One is legit and the other is a lie. Let me know which one is which in the comments before the reveal at the end. The Hour Before Dawn. This next story takes place in Huntsville, Texas. Trevor Hale sat in a cold, concrete cell. His fingers were tracing the grooves of the wall as if he was memorizing the last place he would ever know. Outside, the world moved on, oblivious to the ticking clock above his head. His execution was scheduled for sunrise. As the sun broke the horizon and the guards came to collect him, something strange happened. As they are walking towards the execution room, the guards get a call on the radio. No explanation, just an order from the warden. Stand down. Trevor was led back to his cell. The hours dragged on, each second feeling like borrowed time. As Trevor sat in his cell, he was thinking to himself, was this a technical malfunction? A paperwork issue? Maybe a miracle? Regardless, he had a million thoughts running through his head. That night, the halls buzzed with activity. A man had been arrested, someone caught during a violent robbery in a nearby town. But what made the story strange wasn't the robbery, it was the confession. The suspect was brought to the police station. He was sobbing nonstop, but he had something to get off his chest. He had committed the murder that Trevor had been convicted of 5 years prior. He named details never made public, things only the real killer would know. DNA from an old cigarette butt at the crime scene, once thought to be contaminated, was retested, and it matched the suspect's DNA. Days later, Trevor was released. The sun looked different now to Trevor, less like a countdown and more like a beginning. Reporters swarmed around him and the cameras flashed. Trevor made a statement saying he was glad he gets a second chance at life. Then he simply turned his back on the prison gates and walked away with his hands trembling. As he was walking, he kept thinking to himself, one more minute and he would have been dead, and it haunts him forever. The Quiet Between the Walls. This next story takes place in Bellaire, Ohio. It was a cold, uneventful Wednesday when one of Richard's roommates, Janice, came home from work and began heating a microwave dinner. She was chatting with her other roommate, James, in the kitchen. James mentioned he had leftover food and offered her some, which she declined. James didn't want the food to go to waste, so he went to Richard's room to ask him if he wanted any. Moments later, the air grew heavy as James froze in Richard's doorway, his voice faltering. Richard was laying motionless on the chair, pale and unresponsive. Panic set in as they frantically called 911. What was an ordinary evening was anything but that. When authorities arrived, they stepped into a scene straight out of a nightmare, one that defied all logic and comprehension. The stench hit first, thick and suffocating, followed by a scene that made even seasoned responders hesitate. Richard sat unmoving in a chair, surrounded by filth, as he sat in his own urine and feces. The room seemed frozen in decay, a monument to neglect. But the most horrifying detail lay beneath him. His skin fused to the chair's fabric, an unholy bond formed over the years of immobility. It wasn't just a grotesque sight, it was a harrowing testament to the passage of time. In order to transport Richard to the hospital, they had to remove a section of the wall to get him out of the house. The situation was so dire that one of the EMS responders had to dispose of their uniform after responding to the scene. Despite efforts of the first responders, Richard's story ended in tragedy. He passed away shortly after arriving at the hospital, leaving behind questions that demanded answers. A city official described the room where Richard spent his final days as very filthy, very deplorable. He expressed disbelief that anyone could live in such conditions. So in this episode we had The Hour Before Dawn and The Quiet Between the Walls. Which one is legit and which one is a lie? The legit one was The Quiet Between the Walls. This sad event took place on March 2011 in Bellaire, Ohio. Richard, who weighed 348 pounds, reportedly started sitting in the chair after experiencing knee pain. Over time, he became entirely dependent on his roommates to feed and care for him. His story is not just one of physical confinement, but also of emotional isolation and societal neglect.